Awards generally don't make much sense. Hi, I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick. And I bring that up because last night I was watching the Buffalo Bills beat the Miami Dolphins and win the number 2 seed in the AFC playoffs. It's awesome. Didn't think we were going to be in that position. It's great. It means I get another week of football. I'm happy. The Bills are happy. It's a great day. Right next to that, my friend and I, we were watching the Golden Globes. It's sort of in and out, right? And as we were watching the game, the game went to a commercial break. And so we were watching the Golden Globes and we were sitting there. And my friend asked a very cognizant, important question. Who votes for the Golden Globes? And it just was a question I hadn't thought of in a while. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm sure I knew it, but I didn't know it in that moment. So he looked it up and determined that it was the Hollywood Foreign Press. Interesting. But the contrast of the two contests right next to each other was very, very interesting. Now, some people will say NFL games are rigged, right? They'll say that, refs can control the outcome of the game. Is it WWE? I don't know. But for right now, we don't have any evidence that it's WWE. And for right now, what we believe is that the outcome of the NFL is determined by play on the field. What does that mean? Well, it adds an element of excitement. It adds an element of what I would say is fairness. Because the outcome can be determined on the field, it means that any given Sunday, name of a great movie, by the way, it means that any given Sunday, any team can beat any other team. Now, you've got teams that are in rebuild, that are trying to rebuild, that lost a bunch of really good players over the season, or that have a bunch of injuries or whatever. But there is an element of the result. The result is determined on the field. The result is determined on the field, and there is something that we can understand about that. There's a transparency to that process because we can see it play out literally. Awards like the Golden Globes, well, how do you make that decision? Now, certainly the Hollywood Foreign Press is not selected. The voters in the Hollywood Foreign Press are not selected based on random chance. They're selected because they're skilled movie critics, and this right here, this confusion already shows why, while we love the show and the glitz and the glamour, kind of the voting process confuses us a little bit. And the awards are sort of watered down a little. Now, don't get me wrong. A lot of shows and a lot of movies that are very deserving win the awards. And you say to yourself, well, that makes sense. But the fact is that there really isn't any. The people voting are voting on personal taste. At the end of the day, the vote really comes down to personal taste. Even if you swear on, even if you swear on a Bible that I will vote objectively. Well, what's objectively when it comes to movies and TV shows? What's objective? I don't know. And for those of you who are just listening, you couldn't hear it, but I shrugged. I don't know. I really don't know. And that's curiously how most things in life are. And I think it's why we love sports so much. Most things in life, most votes in life don't come down to objective, quote unquote, truth. They come down to personal preference. Why did Steve get promoted over John? Was it because Steve was objectively the better employee? Possibly. But the truth is, Steve was probably, for whatever reason, preferred to John for the promoted role. Now, don't get me wrong. That this isn't saying that the world is rigged, right? This is not saying the world is rigged against you and you have to kiss ass to get ahead. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is most of life, I'd say 95% of life, is probably out of your control, no matter how credentialed you are. Engineers, for example, let's take engineers. Now, a lot of engineers are excellent engineers. They're great at what they do. And what engineers do is, and most engineers, if they listen to this podcast, they're going to hurt me if I say this, but most of what they do is, calculations. But a lot of engineers are not very good with people. Actually, some of the best engineers I know are not very good with organizational management. And organizational management is a very important part of being promoted. Now, the memes and whatnot on social media will tell you that there's a CEO or an administrator has no skills, right? They're a butt in a seat. Okay, sometimes that's true. But sometimes it's also true that engineers don't have any skills. So how about we just breathe for a minute? But much like, at least compared to the Golden Globes, there is some truth to the fact that you need to actually be good at managing people to be in roles where you will manage people. Or at least you should. But that's the lesson I sort of draw from the Golden Globes, is that don't try to chase down how most processes work, because the truth is most processes that try their best to tell you that they are objective or being determined by the best people, even if they are technically being determined by the best people for the job, it still comes down to personal taste. It still comes down to a personal preference. Now, that preference, for example, a good person who's skilled at organizational management, their personal preferences are going to align with people who are generally good at the job, because they are very good at determining who's best suited for what roles. But that's just neither here nor there when it comes to us understanding that process. And in fact, most processes, we're not required or we're not allowed to see the inside of the process. Like we just don't never get an inside look to it. So we never get to see if it's fair or not. Which is why we love sports. We get to see the entire process of determining the win or the loss. Even WWE, where it's scripted, we see the process from beginning to end play out in front of us. That's why we love movies and why we love art and why we love all of that in theater, because we get the rare look inside of someone's head and what they're thinking and what they're doing in a particular moment. And it drives us nuts that we can't see that all the time, because life would make a lot more sense if we could just figure out what was going on inside that person's head who's driving us nuts. And this sort of stretches into all of aspects of life, not just jobs, not just the Golden Globes, but also, love and dating. Like, why did Becky choose John instead of Steve? Well, Steve might think to himself, objectively, it makes no sense. I'm in better shape. I make more money. I'm smarter. I'm this. I'm that. But you don't get to see inside Becky's process. You don't. And it may not be fair. It may not be equitable. And it may not be, I don't know. I can't think of another word for fair. But it is what it is. And at the end of the day, the only place we're really going to get to see objective truth play out is in sports, which is why I'm glad the Buffalo Bills are still playing next week, because I need me some objective truth in the world. I'm out of time. Go Bills. I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick. Have a great day.